Are the Carolina Panthers overcorrecting from one of their biggest mistakes last season? It's a question we have to ask because, well, last year they overcorrected from one of their biggest mistakes the previous year, which could be like a well-intentioned flaw in David Tepper, right? A well-intentioned flaw is he so desperately wants to fix the problem that he overfixes it, right? Possibility. I'll tell you, like, I'm doing some work in my garage. I put down that the flooring that you see in a lot of garages where it's like gray with specks. You put the little flakes on there. And I can tell you right now, there's a temptation, like they say, to put on a certain, coating level and don't overdo it. There is the temptation to be like, no, I want my floor to be awesome. I'm just going to put down all of it and it's going to be thick and it's going to be better. But it's like, no, that's not what you have to do. You just have to put the right amount. Here's what I mean. 2 years ago, we've talked about it. The big problem, as seen by the Panthers and as told by their actions, was a lack of NFL experience. The Matt Rule coaching staff was very college, right? Even something like when they brought on Joe Brady. He was from LSU. He was college. Matt Rule, they brought him from Baylor. He was college. There was a lot of college on the brain trust that was making decisions. So when that failed, the overcorrection was the Frank Reich staff, right? Instead of just getting guys that were around the NFL and guys that had played in the NFL or played and or coached in the NFL, they went and got the oldest, most veteran, most NFL experienced staff you could imagine, right? They went from like college to like 240 years combined of NFL coaching experience on the sideline for the Carolina Panthers. And it didn't work. That's an overcorrection. So then that staff, right, the problem that they overlooked instead they prioritized the NFL experience was alignment. Right? It was alignment. The GM and the coach didn't align. The coach and the coordinators didn't align. The coordinators and the position coaches didn't align. And do you know how I know that the coach and the coordinators didn't align? When the coach got fired, things changed. Right? If the coordinators and the head coach believed that everything was on, like they were both a part of building it, then when the coach fires, nothing changes because they go, well, we were on board. We thought this was going right. And do you know how I know that the coordinators and the position coaches weren't on the same page? Because when the head coach got fired, a bunch of the position coaches did too. Mm-hmm. Thomas Brown didn't keep around Josh McCown. He didn't keep around Deuce Staley. Those guys, see ya.
Yeah, I think Tabor actually was the one that made those decisions.
Well, I'm sure he asked the offensive coaching staff, hey, do you love this guy or not? So the overcorrection is, or actually, I don't want to say overcorrection. The correction that we've seen from the Panthers is everyone brought in this year, emphasis on alignment. They're buddies. They've worked together. They're in alignment.
And we heard the reports and stories of assistant coaches going behind Frank Reich's back and all that kind of stuff.
Another symptom of not being in alignment.
And I think, again, part of that was Tepper's, I will say, encouragement of making sure that Reich brought in all this experience from all this different places and things like that.
And obviously, we
got what we got.
Keep Camping at O-line coach. Keep Tabor, even if they're not your guys, they have experience and they're my guys, so you're going to keep them.
Yeah.
And it ended up not being great. So this year, it's about alignment. You saw the introductory press conferences for Dave Canales and Dan Morgan. It's about alignment. They used a bunch of different synonyms for alignment, moving in the same direction, community, family,
cohesion.
Bonded, cohesion, right? All of that was used. Well, Carolina named more assistant coaches. We already talked about Will Harriger, quarterback's coach, spent time in Seattle with Dave Canales. Nathan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son. He's now the pass game coordinator. Coached alongside Dave Canales in Seattle. Pat McPherson brought in as the tight ends coach. Coached alongside Dave Canales in Seattle. Keli'i Kekuawa, assistant offensive line coach. Coached alongside Dave Canales in Seattle. There's a lot of Seattle now on this coaching staff, and there's a little Tampa Bay, which Canales also brought with him. Now, there is a bit of a perfect storm that added up to this, right? Because with Pete Carroll no longer being the head coach in Seattle, then bringing in a new staff, essentially everyone on the Seattle coaching staff was looking for a new job, so they were all available. If Pete Carroll was still coaching there, I doubt there would have been this exodus from Seattle to Carolina, but context be darned, it happened. Is it an overcorrection? Just like they did last year with NFL experience? Are they ignoring other things that should be prioritized in exchange of just alignment? I want guys that Dave Canales trusts. I don't think so. It's an okay correction to me. Alignment. There are much worse things to make your number one priority than trust within your building. Now, obviously, if you have a chance to bring in, the world's smartest coach, and you're like, yeah, but I haven't coached with them before, then you overlook that priority and you go with something else. But there are much worse things to over-prioritize than familiarity, trust, and loyalty. I guarantee this group will stick together through adversity. And do you realize how valuable that guarantee is? There won't be any loose lips sinking ships or sinking their ship in Charlotte, which, that's lovely, right? I want these guys so loyal to Canales that when Dave Tepper calls them in and says, so give me the skinny. What's the hot goss? They look at him and go, I like to keep that between me and coach. I understand you're the owner, but you respect that, right? That's what you want from Carolina. You want them to be loyal to Canales and Dan Morgan, which, by the way, guess where Dan Morgan spent a lot of time before he came to Carolina? Seattle. So I don't care. This to me, bringing in coaches, especially after spending a year in Tampa, it's different than, say, what we've seen from Ron Rivera, right? Because Ron Rivera, when he went to Washington, suddenly, right, Kyle Allen was in Washington, and this receiver was in Washington, and that offensive lineman was in Washington. They all played in Carolina previously, and this special teamer. I get worried when you start bringing in players who are end-of-the-bench guys just because they know your system. I don't get worried when you're bringing in coaches, especially if you spent a year elsewhere. Because Dave Canales, he saw what other coaches have to offer. He heard fresh opinions in Tampa, right? He was somewhere else. And then he said, no, I still like these guys. That's loyalty, that's trust, that's honesty, and that's important. Next year, there might be something else to correct. Don't get me wrong, but I hope they never lose sight of having an offensive coaching staff and having a coaching staff in general that is on the same page. It's one of the only reasons I was worried about Evero coming back as defensive coordinator. One of the only reasons, because he wasn't somebody that had any reason to be loyal to Canales, unless they made it very obvious that it was Canales' decision to keep him around. I'm not saying Evero is a bad defensive coordinator. I'm saying I want their buzzword to be true. Alignment.